Okay, I'll call this regular meeting of council to order. If I can have everyone please rise for the national anthem. Okay, I'll now ask if there are any disclosures of pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof. Alderman Dykstra.
Through you, Madam Mayor, in regards to the bridge report of PSW SR 014-2018, I do have a conflict.
Okay, so the deputy clerk will note that. We don't have any delegations tonight, and we don't have any presentations, and we don't have any public hearings. So we'll move right into mayor's announcements and remarks. So first I want to start with a reminder that the Port Colborne-Wainfleet Chamber of Commerce is hosting a debate for all mayoral candidates on the evening of Thursday, October 4th at William E. Brown School. And all attendees are encouraged to bring non-perishable food donations in support of the Port Cares Reach Out Center Food Bank. Tomorrow morning is the final day for the farmers market at the Meridian this year, and the launch of the market in 2018 has been a great success. We look forward to seeing the startup again in 2019, and I was talking earlier today to one of the managers from the Meridian Niagara, and he was saying that they were really pleasantly surprised at how successful it was, especially considering that they did have a bit of a late start. So I think it exceeded their expectations. So I can only imagine what it'll be like next year. I think it'll be fantastic. So hopefully everybody will go out tomorrow morning, and then we'll look forward to next year. And also tomorrow at noon, the Niagara Regional Police Services Cops for Cancer team will be stopping at the Wainfleet Arena on their Tour de Golden Horseshoe event, which is supporting pediatric cancer research and support. So they're supposed to have all three schools. I'm not sure if all three schools have RSVP'd, but they had invited all three of the elementary schools to be at the arena at noon, and I will do my best to be there as well, and looking forward to that. And everybody else is welcome as well. The annual Wainfleet Fall Fair will kick off on Thursday with the parade lining up at 5 p.m. and starting at 6 p.m. And it looks like, I don't want to jinx it, but it looks like the weather's going to be pretty good. And some of us will be flipping pancakes and handing out pancakes and sausage on the Saturday morning. So and that's part of the mayor's remarks. So we'll be serving pancake breakfast on Saturday morning. I think that starts at 9. And then I will be heading to Montebello Park for the annual Mayor's Invitational Grape Stomp in St. Catharines, which is raising money to stomp out cancer. The MPCA board will meet tomorrow morning at 9:30 in Balls Falls. Also, the United Way is having their campaign kickoff breakfast for the United Way Niagara. That's at White Oaks tomorrow morning, starting at 7:30. And our next regular meeting of council will be in 2 weeks on Tuesday, October 2nd. So now we'll move on to the adoption of the minutes.
That the minutes of the regular meeting of council held on September 4th, 2018 be adopted as circulated.
Mover and a seconder for the minutes. Moved by Alderman Gilmore, seconded by Alderman Hessels. Are there any errors or omissions on the minutes? All right, seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, and that's carried. Now we'll go on to our first report.
That Administrative Staff Report ASR-028-2018, Municipal Grant and Donation Policy Amendments and the recommendations contained therein be adopted as circulated.
So mover and a seconder for that report. Moved by Alderman Conk and seconded by Alderman Gilmore. Are there any questions or discussion on this report? Alderman Hessels and then Alderman Gilmore.
Yeah, I was looking at the in-kind contributions. Do they also have to always be a year in advance, like you got to book them a year prior?
We'll look to Adam to answer that question.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Alderman Hessel. So the intention was to get every person who's interested in receiving, whether it be a cash benefit or an in-kind contribution, to apply in November for the upcoming year. Having said that, this past year, being our first year that we piloted this program, it became pretty clear that people who have always had rentals kind of later in the year would just apply kind of closer to that time. The key is for this is that if council wants to keep some of the funds that they've allocated for grants to be held to offset those in-kind waivers later in the year, we can do that. We just want to start capturing all requests. So there is a cost to in-kind contributions. So we need that to be recognized and included in our budget for that, because that's money that the rec doesn't get when we waive the fee. So ideally, we'd like everybody to apply, but there is a way in the policy where we could set aside some funds to be allocated at a future date throughout the year, should these one-off requests.
Okay, yep.
Alderman Gilmore.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, to Adam, through you to Adam. So just so we're clear, the first thing that actually council has to do is establish the cap number and then apply your amended formula to those numbers. Is that correct?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Alderman Gilmore. Yes, that's correct. So you'll notice in section 3.16, the roles and responsibility, it outlines that council is responsible for determining what amount will be included in the annual operating budget for municipal grants and donations. And then after that, we assess the applicants for those funds.
And just, if I may continue, so at what point we need to come up with that number in fairly short order in the end of the year? Like, it'll be one of the first things in the new term, and then that would get potentially adjusted every year going forward from there, depending on what we're doing.
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor, to Alderman Gilmore, that would be correct. So my intention would be to get a sense from council as to what amount they want to include in the 2019 budget, so that come budget deliberation, I can present that as part of the budget, and then at that point, we can start to evaluate the applicants themselves.
Any other questions from council members? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, and that's carried. Now we're on to fire staff reports.
That Fire Staff Report FSR-005-2018, Community Emergency Management Program Coordinator, CEMC, and the recommendations contained therein be adopted as circulated.
Mover and a seconder, moved by Alderman Dykstra, seconded by Alderman Conk. Any questions or discussion on this report? Okay, I will call the question then. All those in favor, and that's carried.
That Fire Staff Report FSR-006-2018, Emergency Management Program Committee, and the recommendations contained therein be adopted as circulated.
Mover and a seconder for this one, moved by Alderman Dykstra, seconded by Alderman Hessels. Any question or discussion on this one? Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor, and that's carried.
That Public Works Staff Report PWSR-014-2018, 2018 Bridge Report, and the recommendations contained therein be adopted as circulated.
Okay, I need a mover and a seconder, moved by Alderman Hessel, seconded by Alderman Conk. Questions or discussion on this report? Alderman Conk.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I just have a couple of quick questions, and I'm assuming it's Mr. Nan that will be able to answer them. Can you tell me, several times I noticed the words severe scaling appeared. I think I know what that means, but can you just clarify for me? And is it bad?
Through your worship, to members of council, and scaling is the first signs of a deterioration, basically. It's one of the initial signs, as well as you could have spalling that could occur in the concrete. That's initial signs that there's something taking place below it, whether it be in the rebar or the concrete itself and moisture getting in.
Okay. Thank you for that. And so you've listed here all of the bridges under a structure summary list, and I've marked in the company has ranked them from low to high. So we have two that are ranked high and now. So does that mean that in the upcoming budget year, you're going to be requesting money for those two bridges?
Through your worship, to Alderman Conk, the initial bridge, yes, and we brought that forth to council because we applied for the grant for one of these projects.
Yep.
The second project, we do have some direction that we will be searching for, and that's to dispose of the asset.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any other questions for this report? Alderman Gilmore.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to Richard. So in the big picture, long term, what, and maybe this is to Adam as well, but like, it's a fairly daunting report, and I'm just wondering how you're going to lay this out over the next 10, 15 years to deal with all this, because it's millions of dollars. And so I'm just wondering, I know we're going to have an asset management plan. Are you planning to build that in so that we start knocking this off rather than just keep kicking the can down the road?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Alderman Gilmore. Yeah, that's essentially what we are going to be proposing in the upcoming budget, is to start allocating funds for these critical infrastructure items. That way we can address them as we need. You'll notice near the tail end of the report, I think it's page 99, where the big numbers kind of really get presented about the 10 million. And it's suggesting in the report that we allocate 133,000 a year to be able to address these infrastructure costs going forward. So that's a good starting point for us to say, look, to be able to repair and replace the 17 bridges that we have in the municipality, we need to be budgeting for 133,000 in costs annually. Now, obviously, some projects or some bridges need to be replaced before we'll have the money for it, and that's when the debt discussion comes into play to decide how to properly fund the projects going forward. But I think the 133 is a good starting point for the 2019 budget to kind of have a discussion on what we want to do going forward. But you're right, we can't continue to push these down the road because the costs are just getting more and more with inflation and construction costs rising annually.
Okay, any further questions? All right, seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, and that is carried. And so I'll talk slow for a minute. We're on to correspondence. So there's two items that require attention. So the first one is from the town of Fort Erie, C 176 2018. So I don't know if we want to discuss this or if we just want to maybe Alderman Gilmore.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would move that we just receive this correspondence for information.
Okay, so moving to receive. A seconder for that, Alderman Dykstra. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, and that's carried. And then the second one is from the multi-municipal wind turbine working group, so I don't know if everybody's had a chance to review that and if they want to support or just receive for information. So I'll look to council, to Alderman Hessels.
Yeah, I would say we should support it.
Okay, so a seconder for that, Alderman Conk. Any discussion on that? Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor, and that's carried. Was there any other correspondence anybody wanted to mention? Okay. Okay, so now we're on to the bylaws, but before we get into the bylaws, staff does have a brief presentation with regard to the first bylaw that's on the agenda, so I'll look to Mr. Nan.
Through your worship, to all members of council. Okay. This needs an extension. Wasn't made for us tall people. So before you we've actually presented as well to the public. There were on the copies on the table. This is just a brief PowerPoint presentation, basically with the key high points on that memo that was presented to you. We've spent a lot of time in the past couple of years researching documents, et cetera, on how this all came to play, as well as the present and past agreements. So from our understanding, the initial waterworks company was started in the 1940s, but there is no recorded council approval or permission given at that time. Next, please. In 1975 was the first franchise agreement, which was bylaw 500/1975, between the township and Thomas Edsel. It was enacted in August the 11th. In 1975, okay, so that would be the first original agreement. In that agreement, it states that we granting permission or consent permission and the authority to the company to enter upon all road allowances now or anytime hereafter to install and maintain the infrastructure related to the waterworks. The company to perform authorized works in the township right away, subject to supplying the township with scaled plans, specifications, and securities. Basic liability indemnification clauses, and it was for a 20-year term. In 1980, council enacted a zoning bylaw amendment, which was 645-80, to permit the construction of a pumping station and treatment facility at 12173 Augustine Road. In 1981, the township entered a renewed agreement with 486606 Ontario Inc., and that was enacted in August of 18th by bylaw 727-81. The agreement itself and all the conditions contained in that agreement are the identical to the one from 1975, so it was a copy and paste. In 2001, council enacted bylaw 006/2001. It's a supporting an application from the company for the approval of waterworks to the Ministry of Environment. This was a requirement from the MOE in order for the Long Beach Waterworks to receive a permit to draw water from the lake and to operate the water plant. At that time, the MOE, in their research, believed it was the very first permit authorizing the company to draw water. So prior to this point, they just drew the water and never had permission. The application identified at the time that there was 60 year-round homes and 170 seasonal cottages that were receiving the service. In 2003, we found a copy of an updated franchise agreement that was drafted by the township. It was never signed, and the bylaw itself was never located as well. So it was never approved by council, that agreement. But the records do indicate that the company was instead authorized by the township to continue operating under the terms of the 1981 agreement, which is again identical to the 1975 agreement. Late in 2016, we, as the township, started discussions with the prior owner of the company, to update the 1981 agreement, because we found that there was a lot of things in that agreement that we didn't like, so we wanted to start discussions. We were advised at the time that the company's for sale, and information will be instead forwarded to the new purchaser, whoever that may be. 2018, in June, Clearford Water System issued a press release saying that they acquired the privately owned water company and that they serviced approximately 300 residents. The township started, once receiving the information, we contacted the company and started negotiating a new road use agreement with them. And under a new road use agreement, until a new road use agreement is in place, we continue to operate under the existing 1981 agreement, which again is identical wording to the agreement from 1975. And the language and the scope current agreement is way out of date and antiquated. So why is it important to update the existing agreement? The language to the current standards, obviously, and provide some modern control to the township over the use of its right-of-ways. Allow for continued service to the current users of the system. Establish a process for municipal consent for the works to be performed within the township right-of-ways. Require provisions of technical drawings and proof of approvals for existing and/or planned works within the right-of-way. Establish clear oversight of the company's maintenance activities within the township right-of-way. Establish processes to ensure appropriate regulations, including federal, provincial, and municipal, are adhered to. Establish notification clauses to provide information to the township during their operations or any repairs, including the operations department, emergency services, as well as the water system users. Update insurance requirements to minimize the township's liability exposure, because presently the current language dates back to 1975. And to establish a fee structure for the use of the municipal right-of-ways.
Okay, thank you for the presentation. Are there any questions from council members to our presenter? Alderman Dykstra.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Richard, can I just ask you a couple of quick questions? One thing, is this related at all to the responsibility the municipality has and the agreement considered at the Niagara region last Thursday night in regards to water servicing for the Lakewood development?
No, because these negotiations actually started long before that. We started these negotiations with the previous company. And the agreement that was with the region is strictly to do with Lakewood and their obligations under one of the conditions between Lakewood and the region.
So if I may continue, Madam Mayor. So so this agreement, Richard, this road use agreement is just to means that the municipality can protect itself if there's needed road work or needed any sort of repairs, or it's a document, it's a created document and an agreement that there's a process that any operator, Clearford or this other name that's on here, are going to do any work in that area, they would need to follow the agreement with the municipality. It's protecting our municipality from any sort of repairs without us being notified?
Through your worship to Alderman Dykstra. See, the original agreement actually gave them the authority to put their water lines wherever they wanted within that right-of-way. The new agreement does not give them that authority. It provides some protection for the township, and they have to go through an approval process from us. Similar to Hydro One, the gas company, anytime they want to put any infrastructure in a road right-of-way, they have to receive municipal consent as well.
Other questions from council members? Alderman Conk.
Through you, Madam Mayor. So Richard, can you clarify for the residents in the audience that this particular agreement doesn't have, the water company doesn't have anything to do with the township other than the fact that the pipes are in our road allowance. We don't have any control over what they charge their customers. We don't have any control over any of what they do unless it's within our road use.
Through your worship to Alderman Conk, that is correct. It is a private water service. They supply the residents, and they deal strictly with those residents for any remuneration for the fees.
Thank you.
Other questions? Other questions from council members? Okay, seeing none, thank you, Richard, and Alderman Dykstra. Oh, you had another question?
Yeah,
first.
sorry, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to, just on Alderman Conk's point, is it, if, for the waterworks down there, it's individual residents whether or not they want to hook up. Nobody's mandated or nobody's forced to hook up into this service. Is that correct?
That's correct. It's not a mandatory service. It's a service that the company offers, and they technically could go right by one resident to supply a different resident. So if, say you, yourself and Alderman Conk live side by side, you wanted it, she didn't, but the water line started here, they would go past her residence, she wouldn't be charged anything, and you would be charged because you now are on that service.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you for putting that together. Okay, so I'm going to, so we're moving on to the bylaws, so if you want to go ahead and read that.
That the following bylaws be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed this 18th day of September 2018. A, bylaw number 047-2018, being a bylaw to authorize the corporation of the Township of Wainfleet to execute a road use agreement between the corporation of the Township of Wainfleet and 486606 Ontario Inc., carrying on business as Long Beach Waterworks.
Okay, so I need a mover and a seconder for that. Moved by Alderman Hessel, seconded by Alderman Gilmore. Is there any discussion or questions with the bylaw? Alderman Conk?
Through you, Madam Mayor. I am going to propose, I'm not really comfortable with this and with all of the back and forth and emails that we've had and the Facebook posts and whatnot. I'm wondering if it wouldn't be expeditious of ourselves to do first and second reading this evening and then the third reading at next council meeting, just so that we all have sober second thought and to give the residents time to cogitate on what they were given this evening, and hopefully we will be able to calm everybody down and we'll be able to move forward with this.
Okay, so that's a deferral, was that in the form of a deferral motion then, or I'll just get Will to speak to it and then we can.
Through you, Madam Mayor. From the sounds of it, I think what we'll be doing is amending the motion. It's an amendment to that primary motion such that bylaw A as listed, I think it's
Yes.
bylaw A as listed, only receives first and second reading this evening. And third reading will come in October. October 2nd, I believe, is the next meeting of council. So bylaw A would receive first and second reading only, and bylaw B would receive first, second, and third reading.
So I'm getting a seconder for Alderman Conk's amendment. Okay, so is there a seconder, Alderman Dykstra? And Richard, is there any time issue with this, postponing it for 2 weeks?
Your worship, no, it's council's decision how they would prefer to make a decision on it.
Madam Mayor, through you, Mr. Nan is correct that it is within council's authority to defer the consideration of passing the bylaw to authorize the new agreement. But please do keep in mind that there is an existing agreement effectively from 1975 that is in place, and that deferring this simply means that the old agreement remains in force and effect with respect to any activities of the Waterworks Company in road allowances.
Alderman Conk.
Through you, Madam Mayor, so have we had any indication that there's potential work that's going to happen imminently?
Through your worship to Alderman Conk. At the present time, they are surveying what they have because they're not even sure where everything is.
Okay.
They have applied for locates to do some trench exploration digs at this point within our right-of-ways, just to try and locate because the system itself doesn't have any tracing wires. Okay. So they technically don't even know where they all are. So they did apply for several locations where they do want to excavate.
Okay, so does that mean that if we were to put this off, then they would be able to go forward and do it anyway without any? Okay. So that puts a different complexion on this whole thing then.
Through your worship to Alderman Conk, we have started building a good rapport with the company, and they aren't here to try and make our life miserable, but they just are trying to find out where they are. They are not planning on doing anything major repairs or replacements as of yet. They're just basically trying to find what they have and where it is.
If I could, just to build on that, again, we're not trying to scare members of council. We just want everyone to understand there is a current agreement in place and in effect, which all we're doing is delaying, which is completely fine and acceptable.
Alderman Hessels, you had a question?
Yeah. The thing is, if something did foreseeable, or not foreseeably, but something could go wrong, and then they would just do the work under the old agreement, where this new agreement, I believe, protects us a whole lot better than the old agreement. To me, it looks really straightforward, and I think all these staff reports were more housekeeping rules. Like, if I go through them all, it's not that we're trying to do anything behind anybody's back. It's just trying to protect Wainfleet as best we can. So I don't know if, I guess we got to vote on that amendment first unless she wants to withdraw it, but.
I don't know if you're rethinking or if you want to go ahead and vote on it. Well, Will's saying we're going to vote on it, so. Okay, so did you want to comment again, Alderman Kong?
Well, it's really, we're between a rock and a hard place at this point, trying to satisfy everybody. And I agree with Alderman Hessels, we aren't trying to hide anything. To be brutally honest, we were given this document 2 weeks ago in camera. And that was the first time we'd heard it, seen it, and we talked it over and agreed as a group that it was a good document moving forward. So I guess at this point, I think I should probably withdraw my motion.
Okay, so then we will go back to, so we had a mover and a seconder to start with on the first bylaw. We do have a mover and a seconder, right? Yeah, so it's back on the floor. So any further discussion or comments? Okay, then I'll call the question. All those in favor? And that's carried. Okay, so we'll go on to the next bylaw.
That the following bylaw be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed this 18th day of September 2018. Bylaw number 048-2018, being a bylaw to close and convey part of the public road being part of Morgan's Point Road, designated as Part 2, 59R-15673, Township of Wainfleet.
Okay, mover and a seconder for this one. Moved by Alderman Dykstra, seconded by Alderman Gilmore. Any questions or discussion on this one? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? And that's carried. Any notices of motion tonight? Okay, no proclamations. And just before we get into other business, if council will indulge me, I forgot to mention in correspondence, the first piece of correspondence, which was awesome. It was a really lovely letter from Marshville Heritage Festival, thanking the fire department, the volunteers for the great job they did, and also for the township in getting everything taken care of before the festival. So we just wanted to highlight that because it was very nice, and so we really appreciate that. So that was all I wanted to mention. So now I will look to council members for other business this evening. Okay, so we got Alderman Dykstra and then Alderman Hessels.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I actually have two quick items. First of all, just a reminder that tomorrow night at the Winger School, there's a DSBN Accommodation Review Committee meeting. Tomorrow night at Winger School. I believe it starts at 6 p.m. And the second item, being part of the Wainfleet Fire community, with the part of the committee, we had talked way back with Chief Foster, and now that we have Chief Alcock here, we had talked about getting some signs erected around the community, the warning volunteer green light flashing signs. I don't even know what they're properly called. There was a conversation, like again, with Chief Foster, and then it was kind of lost in the shuffle. So I was kind of wanting to shed some new light on that, and I was wondering, with Morgan's experience, maybe he has some experience, maybe he could speak to whether we could explore getting those signs erected around the community.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, so there is an approved MTO signage for the green light. The last time I priced them, they were about $50 a sign plus posts and install. We can certainly install them on regional roads and municipal roads. If we wanted to place it on highways, we would need MTO approval. But it's certainly something that we can look forward to.
If I may continue, Madam Mayor. So I'm not sure whether you had a chance to talk to financial, but would we have money in the budget to do that yet this year, or?
In looking at our current budget variance, there is some monies left in public education and fire prevention, so that is certainly something that we could look at doing.
So procedurally, is there something that council would need to do so that this could potentially move forward?
Through you, Madam Mayor, probably the best course of action would be to, because we are talking about the reallocation, if you will, to some extent of some budgetary funds, is to pass a motion directing staff to use any surplus funds from those accounts to the sort of education component of signs on municipal and regional roads, and if possible, MTO roads as well. I understand that in order to get a permit, there's an application permit process with MTO roads. So there might be some additional costs in there, but if we get that sort of motion, we can proceed as far as we can, as quickly as we can.
Madam Mayor, I'd be prepared to make that motion. If it's acceptable for staff, I would suggest that we move forward with making that motion.
Okay, so making a motion to have staff look into the fire safety budget and then to.
And relocating any surplus funds to getting the signs erected around our community.
Okay.
And possibly further to that, maybe we could look to doing the application for the MTO for the Ontario highways as well.
Okay. So can I get a seconder for that motion? Seconded by Alderman Conk. Any questions or discussion on that motion? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, and that's carried. Okay, anybody else? Oh, sorry, Alderman Hessels.
Yeah. Just what went on at the region there in their staff report. I wonder if our CAO, and I hope he prepared, because I did tell him to, that staff report, PO 532, 2018 from the Niagara region. Just to explain, because we got people and there's word going out that, I don't know, just to get the story straight, if we can know, so they can know exactly what's going on.
Through you, Madam Mayor. I did actually pull the report from the region, from the region's website and their agenda. It was actually presented to the region's Planning and Economic Development Committee on September 5th. And the title of the report was Lakewood Beach Development Municipal Responsibility Agreement for On-Site Water and Wastewater Communal Systems. In pulling or in reviewing the report, again, the purpose of the report was to inform regional council of a municipal responsibility agreement that was proposed to be executed between the region of Niagara and the owner of Lakewood Beach Properties. And the purpose of the agreement was related to an on-site water and wastewater communal system, which was one of the conditions of draft approval that the Council of the Township of Wainfleet provided when it was considering a development application. The on-site communal water and wastewater system was determined, and I'm quoting directly from the report, was determined to be required servicing through a planning process and environmental assessment process that occurred in 2015 and 2016, where the Ministry of the Environment and Climate Change directed or identified that the Niagara region should enter into a municipal responsibility agreement with the applicant in order to achieve or ensure approval of servicing of the site by the ministry. Again, quoting right from the report, planning approvals for this development have been subject to applications since 2007, 2008. And most recently, there was a draft approval for a plan of condominium in July 2017 by the township, and construction is targeted for 2019, subject to, and I emphasize that part, subject to clearance of the conditions that the township has established and all the necessary agreements, particularly this one and others being put in place. So again, this report at the region was something that the property owner, the applicant, was required to do. It was condition number 34 of 61 conditions that the township established to oversee or to govern the development application that the township was dealing with. As a council, you passed that condition. You told the developer, go to the region and get this agreement in place and then come back to us, and that's what he's done. We currently haven't received any formal documentation or confirmation that everything is completed yet, but once we do receive that communication, that the condition has been addressed, it will be brought back before this council, along with all the other conditions that they're working on addressing, for council to review prior to giving any final approval for the development to occur. And when I say this council, I don't necessarily mean the people sitting at this table, because I think we only have 2 more meetings regularly scheduled before the new council takes office. So from a timing perspective, we are still awaiting some significant documentation to come in before we can bring that report to you.
Yeah, I guess the key word, it's an MRA, municipal responsibility agreement, but that municipal here actually means regional, doesn't it?
Through you, Madam Mayor, yes, the municipality involved in this agreement is the regional municipality of Niagara, as per the terms of the conditions and the expectations of the Ministry of the Environment.
Yeah, so I just wanted to make that absolutely clear that it's not municipal. It's actually should have been an RRA, Regional Responsibility Agreement. Okay, my next one is the Wainfleet Fair. Yeah, it's my wife's kind of been put in charge of finding volunteers for the gates, and trying to find volunteers seems to be a real problem. So I just want to put it out there. If there's anybody that can or is willing to volunteer, I do have some sign-up sheets here. It would really be appreciated because it is a struggle. Like Denise Snyder used to look after it, and she passed away this year. So yeah, it's quite a job just trying to get enough volunteers to commit. And you know, it's a agricultural fair, a rural fair, so we would hope that we could get enough volunteers to kind of volunteer here so that we can keep it going, because it's a lot of work for the few people that do run it. So that would really be appreciated. And I guess the other thing with Wainfleet minor hockey, if I don't know if there's any way we could sponsor them a bit, like they haven't even got enough kids, I hear, for a novice house league team. Like, they're struggling. I don't know if there's any thing out there to encourage parents, or if there was something out there, if anybody has any ideas to kind of make this minor hockey a going thing. Because I remember when my kids were small, we had 3 divisions for every, or three different teams for every division, and now they can't even get some divisions filled up. So the arena, we spend a lot of money on it, but it doesn't seem like we're getting that full potential out of it because we can't get people to sign up. So if anybody's got ideas, it would be great if they could bring them forward.
That's why the schools are talking about amalgamating, because the birth rate, big decline over the last few years. But yeah, maybe some people will hear what you had to say tonight and think of somebody. Do you know how many kids they have registered this year?
No, I'm not sure, but I heard the novice team, they couldn't have a novice team because there wasn't enough kids. And what's happening, a lot of kids are going to other centers now because we don't have a rep team. So yeah, it's kind of bad. I think the Bantam team's really short too, is kind of what I got off of the news or whatever. So
Okay.
yeah, if there's anybody got any ideas how to make it go, we'd be interested.
Okay. Any other business? Alderman Conk.
Through you, Madam Mayor, just a clarification from yourself. I know there, and coming back to the regional municipal agreement, there has been some chatter on the social media about no representation at the region, and I just want you to tell the people, you don't sit on that committee, so you weren't there because you don't sit on that committee. That's correct, right?
Yes, I don't. I sit on Public Works and Public Health, which is all day Tuesday. And then I sit on Corporate Services, which is in the morning on the Wednesday. I've been on those committees the whole term. So I do not sit on the Planning Committee. I did the previous term, but I do not. And that report, I think people know, but that report was received for information. So that was the recommendation. Okay, any other business from anybody? All right, seeing none, then we'll go to the bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council.
That bylaw number 049-2018, being a bylaw to adopt, ratify, and confirm the actions of the council at its regular meeting held on the 18th day of September 2018, be read and passed this 18th day of September 2018.
Okay, I need a mover and a seconder. Alderman Gilmore, Alderman Hessels, all those in favor, that's carried. And then I need a motion to adjourn. Moved by Alderman Hessel, seconded by Alderman Gilmore, all those in favor, and that's carried.